So here we are, class one, and this is me. And let me start by introducing myself a little bit further than Enrique did. I am the managing director of entrepreneurship at UCSF, and that means I run the program. The program has morphed over time. It's been different things, different years, and I'll talk a bit about what I'm doing now. I come from business, and so I've never been an academic. I don't consider myself an academic. I have been in many companies. I've been a management consultant. I've been an executive for hire. Everything I've done has been in the private sector until right now. And I've been in both the tech world and in life sciences. And tech I did a fairly long time ago, and frankly never found it very interesting. And I think part of the problem is that I was in Boston, and Boston focused on hardware, and all the cool stuff was happening in California with Apple and Google, et cetera, on all software. So anyway, in the sort of after 10 years in tech, I was fortunate enough to be able to get into biotech and did that in the fairly early days in Boston. I currently advise a number of startups and mentor startups. They're almost all from my network of companies that I've had a hand in some way because they've gone through my training or whatever, but I also mentor companies outside that network. And I'm global, so I've been teaching and mentoring and moderating and presenting in all those different continents. I do things from time to time for the US State Department. I've both been a speaker at their conferences and an instructor. I did a little stint as a political appointee in Massachusetts and worked on business policy and actually the early biotech policy. So that was really super interesting. I've moderated a couple of White House Global Entrepreneurship Summits. I don't know if any of you know what NSF Corps is, but we can talk about that another time. I'm national faculty on that. I also do grant reviews for the NIH and NSF, and I'm not talking science, I'm talking commercial grants, or the piece of the grants that are commercial. And I'm actually right now in the middle of reviewing NIH grants for entrepreneurship. So that's pretty interesting. I have an MBA from Wharton and a master's from Columbia. This is who I really am. I've always been an entrepreneur. And actually, this is not my own photograph, but that looks a lot like my dog. So I had to grab it. So my latest, when I was a little kid, kind of the age of these girls, I started coloring napkins and selling them to my relatives. So if they came to our summer house, they got hit up with a pitch, and it was remarkably successful. It's kind of tough to turn down this little 7-year-old asking you for money, holding out this colored napkin. So that was the start, and a number of different things happened since then. But this is my most recent entrepreneurial venture, and even though it's inside UCSF. When I started it as my pandemic project, which was, look, everything blew up. You can't do anything that you did before. You probably won't even have a job. Go, no one even said this, go figure something out. All they said was you probably won't have a job because finances are really tough right now. I created this course, and I did it without any help and without any resource. And I launched it in September 2020. We've now run it 3 times. We have over 300 alums touching 24 countries on 6 continents. And it's a 10-week course that has features Silicon Valley guest lecturers and mentors. I actually, combining the numbers of them, there are 40 of them involved in this last course. So like a traditional entrepreneur, I did it from scratch. I did it without money. I did it without resource. I just tested it out in some techniques I'm going to teach you about, and found out it looked like there was a need for it. I launched it and it happened. So that's a bit about who I am. Okay, so our objectives in this month that we're together is for you to assess the business opportunity that your project might have. And I know you're all working on some interesting science in the area of oncology. So science is not business. We'll talk about that. You need to learn how to understand the market firsthand, and we're going to be teaching you about that. And then what are early stage investors looking for? So those are the three objectives. And these are the topics we're going to cover. I'm going to do opportunity assessment today, which is how do you know if this idea that you have, which may be a project you've been working on for years, and you've been in the lab and you've been progressing on it, but how do you know if it's actually a business opportunity? And then customer discovery, which is a term that's, I don't know if you've all heard of it, it's in, seems like ubiquitous use in the entrepreneurship networks. And it's, who are your customers? And once you figure that out, what are their needs? And then you try to figure out if your idea can match their needs. A third topic is business models, which is how you're going to make money. So if you can't make money, you don't have a business, we better figure out how you'll do this. And then investment, what the options are for early stage life science companies, and what motivates investors to put money into your company. And I know that Sarah has touched on some of this stuff last week, but we're going to go into more depth and also reinforce what she taught you. So those are the topics. Do I have any questions? And the question is, can I, you know, I don't think I can, oh, can I see the chat? Yes, I can. Hang on. Okay, great. So if you have any questions so far, please ask. I know, Enrique, maybe you can help me if there are any hands up, because I can't see everybody, but otherwise I will.
I guess I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Will you make those slides available to us or not?
Yeah, they'll be in, I believe, Dropbox. Is that
awesome.
Where they go? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be sharing them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. Yep, glad you asked. Any other questions? All right, we'll proceed. Now for some reason I can't. Okay. Okay. So readings. Readings are part of this. I have suggested a textbook which has been very well rated by all my students who've used it in the global class. And I'll assign you chapters from it. And then some articles from the internet that you shouldn't have any problems accessing. And I send these out every week. So you got these in my email of last week. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at them, but there they are for your reference. This is a picture of the textbook. I'm pretty sure you can rent it if you don't want to buy it. Anyway, it's got lots of topics which we're not going to cover, and then the ones that we are going to cover. And then there is an assignment for this class, and it's 10 customer discovery interviews. And these may end up being the most valuable part of the class. You probably don't even know what a customer discovery interview is yet. That's fine, we'll tell you about it, but just be aware. We're going to cover customer discovery next week, and then you'll know all about it. And then you need to do 5 interviews the following week and 5 by the end of the course. So you have a total of 10. So that's the assignment. Class rules are cameras on. Nothing worse than for an instructor than to look at a bunch of blank screens. So appreciate your doing that. And I'm just checking and scrolling through. Oh, great. Everybody's doing it. Thank you so much. And questions, we talked about that, and really ask anything. I know that you all are not business people, and you know, if you put me in a science lab, I would be like so clueless about what to do or what it all was and what the stuff was. And so that's sort of my frame of reference. There's no question you can ask that is too naive. And if you want to know what it is, probably somebody else does as well. So be brave, ask questions. Okay, now one of my favorite times of the class is to find out who you are. So I'm going to ask you all to do a 60-second intro. And for those of you who've ever watched pitches or elevator pitches, you always have to have a 60-second review of what you're doing in a way that your audience can understand it. So this is sort of good practice to keep within that time frame. Plus, we don't have tons of time. So I practiced it last night to make sure I wasn't asking anything unreasonable, to talk about who you are. So name, your affiliation, anything you want to say about you, what you're working on. You have to make it really brief, really high level. And then why you're taking this class and why you're in the program. So I can ask for volunteers. We're going to run through, I guess, just the team leads in this case. So if anyone would like to raise their hand and volunteer, that would be great. Otherwise, I'm going to call on somebody. So
we have Jogesh.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Hi, my name is Yogesh Gupta. I'm an assistant professor at UT Health San Antonio at Grihi Children's Cancer Research Institute. I'm also a founder of Atomic Therapeutics, a startup company that I launched and hope to license technologies and take bench side discoveries into clinics. And I'm a structural biologist by training, but have a deep interest in cancer biology and infectious diseases. And we have very cool and great technologies, especially one of them is advancing into preclinical trials. And we are targeting novel pathways in cancers, especially in pediatric cancers and also in adult cancers like ovarian cancers and breast and glioblastoma. So
I think we might be out of time. What do you think? I unfortunately didn't check the watch. Are you at 60 seconds or do you have a few more?
No, I'm done actually. So
okay.
Thanks for reminding me. I should be brief and efficient.
It's really hard. I just tell you, it takes many practices.
Okay.
And so you can do practice at home, right? Just
okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. But thank you. Thanks for being first. Jacques.
Hi, my name is Jacques Lux. I'm assistant professor in radiology at UT Southwestern. My training is in chemistry and transition to more translational science and material science. Now my research focus is on development of materials that are sensitive to ultrasound. And to this end, we developed a platform for gene delivery and immunotherapeutics delivery using ultrasound. So I came in this program to learn more about the business side of things and how to spin off a company. And I came with Dr. Jiang from MD Anderson, and with Sina, who is working in my lab as a graduate student.
Excellent, thank you. That's great. Okay, who's Joanna?
Yes, okay. My name is Johanna Webb, and I'm the president of Riverwalk Therapeutics. Riverwalk has been spun out from UT Health San Antonio for the purpose of commercializing some small molecules that were developed by Dr. Jean Jiang at UT Health San Antonio. These molecules are showing terrific efficacy in metastatic triple negative breast cancer. And we are aiming to take them into the clinic and continue our development and reach that goal. We joined this program, or were so lucky as to get accepted to the program, to really help us position ourselves to be successful in that, to hone what we have and present it accurately and interestingly to our investors to get some funds to move forward.
Excellent, well done. Okay, thank you. Who else? See any other hands? Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Okay, how about Chun Li? Sorry, I just saw your nice face on my screen.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, my name is Chun Li. I'm a professor from MD Anderson Cancer Center. I'm a chemist by training. So we developed a drug delivery platform that showed excellent anti-tumor efficacies in pancreatic cancer models, as well as liver cancer models. So the purpose of attending this course is really trying to find a way how we can move this forward, push this through into the clinics. Thank you.
Great. So do you have in vitro data or in vivo data?
Yes, we do. We have tons of in vivo data and in vitro data.
Great. Okay. All right.
Hey,
Thank you.
I'm gonna be calling out people just in the spirit of moving along.
Great.
Subhash, do you want to go?
Yes, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Subhash Chauhan, and I'm a professor here at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. And I'm also head of the department here for immunology and microbiology department. And our lab has found out some really novel technologies for tumor diagnosis and tumor therapy.
So you're working on a diagnostic as well as therapeutic.
Yes, yes. So it's basically a theranostic approach.
Okay. And why are you in the program?
Why I'm in the program? Yeah, that's a good question. Because PMC advised me, like, you have some really good stuff here which can go for commercialization. So I'm just looking for that aspect, like how we can utilize our technology for further commercialization.
You still need to be convinced, it sounds like.
No,
Yeah.
I'm convinced, but since I have not paid much attention so far about that,
Okay.
and this workshop we had last week, it was pretty amazing. And now I'm very convinced, like, we can go for it.
Oh, okay, great. Next.
Hans. Dear Hans, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I'm Hans Summers. I'm a medical oncologist, actually here at UT Southwestern. I'm here with my counterpart, Jankar Shun, who is a radio chemist. We've developed prodrugs that we hope can solve the main problem of immunotherapy, meaning tumors that are cold and simply resistant to current forms of immunotherapy, to turn them hot and actually give them a chance to respond. We are essentially hijacking imaging probes that are in humans and load onto them a payload similar to like a Trojan horse and direct them to tumors. So very translatable approach that we hope to put into commercial vehicle to get into patients and get them tested in patients.
So you're in the let's start a company camp.
Let's start a company camp once we have enough data to get invested.
Okay, great. Okay.
Bruna.
Good afternoon, everybody, and nice to meet you, Stephanie. My name is Bruna Corradetti. I'm an assistant professor in nanomedicine at the Houston Methodist Research Institute. Together with Dr. Healy, who is also in the call, we developed an exosomal vaccine for the treatment of advanced ovarian cancer. And the group is represented here by myself, Dr. Healy, and Dr. Jilka, who is the person who will be supporting the company that we would like to set on this technology, on the technology transfer part. Why I'm here is because we have some data, we don't have probably enough data, but I'm a pure scientist and I'm interested in learning as much as possible to move my idea towards commercialization.
Great. Good reason to be here. Okay, next.
Kara. I'm gonna be typing in the chat the sequence and the names, all right?
Okay. Hi, I'm Kara Gonzalez. I'm an associate professor at UT Health San Antonio. I'm in the Department of Comprehensive Dentistry. I'm a dentist scientist. My PhD is in cellular and structural biology. And I study oral cancer, and my lab is working on a new class of anti-cancer drugs. The reason and I'm very fortunate also to be in this program, but my interest is in learning how to develop a startup, get investors, sort of learn everything from the beginning to end.
Perfect. Okay, welcome.
George.
Next.
So hi to everybody, great seeing you again. So I'm George Kalin. I am from MD Anderson. And all the day long, I have fun working with non-coding RNA. So I'm working with that part of the genome who never codify for proteins, and represent about 90% of the genome. So I truly believe, like a former gastroenterologist and intensive care unit physician, that our goal as a clinician scientist is to improve the life of our patients. So therefore, I try to develop all these new technologies to treat cancer patients and not only. I am the scientific founder of a company in Seattle. I love that company. I love Seattle, but why not to learn better how to start another company in Texas based on a new concept? The fact that the small molecules that the people designed to target proteins, they can be designed to target RNAs. And if you think that this is a cheap idea, let's go back January 2020, how wonderful would be if the scientific world would have already small molecules targeting RNA viruses. And with this, thank you all. I'm here to learn, and again, my pleasure to be with all of you.
Great, thank you, George. Yeah, I agree with you. It'd be wonderful. It's a good vision.
Hi there, my name is Phil Shearer. I'm the head of the Touchstone Diabetes Center and chair of cell biology here at UT Southwestern Medical Center. I have a long-standing interest in the basic physiology of fat tissue and how it interacts with other tissue in the context of diabetes, obesity, and also, of course, interactions with cancer in terms of the stromal interactions of adipocytes with infiltrating tumor cells. We have developed with colleagues in Houston a series of monoclonal antibodies in the area of fibrosis and tumor growth that we are trying to eventually commercialize. Hopefully, we have a lot of preclinical data at hand, and we are kind of ready to hit the clinic with some of them in the form, perhaps, of a small startup. And I'm here to learn more about how exactly we should go about that.
Great. Okay, thank you.
My name is Ratna Vadlamudi. I am a professor in UT Health San Antonio. My research interests are developing therapies for treating endocrine-resistant breast cancer, especially relapsed breast cancer. We identified small molecules which we can use to treat these cancer. The main purpose is to understand how to start a company and how to get the finances to develop this company. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And you've got data?
Yes, so we have in vitro and in vivo data, yes.
In vivo, great. Okay.
Hi there, I think I'm next. My name is Rob Jank. I'm a medical oncologist at MD Anderson. I'm an associate professor here in the Department of Genomic Medicine. I'm also a clinician. I see patients undergoing bone marrow transplantation. So I guess a physician scientist with the clinical side and a bench lab side. Most of our work is focused on the microbiome, looking at the microbiome and cancer treatment outcomes. But we have, I guess you could call it a side hustle in the lab, looking at T-cell responses to antigens. The T cells are, of course, very important in bone marrow transplantation, but they're also, clearly important for immunotherapy of cancer and response to COVID vaccines. And so our strategy has been to develop a platform that will allow somebody with an interesting T cell to identify what the antigen is that the T cell is recognizing. And so the idea there is, can we learn from the immune systems of our patients, our cancer patients, and use this as a strategy to identify novel therapeutic targets for immunotherapies?
Great. Okay.
Oh, and I'm part of this program because I know nothing about biotech and startups and venture, and I have a lot to learn. So very happy to be here.
The perfect audience. Yeah. Okay. Next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rosa Wong. I'm a professor in breast surgical oncology and surgical oncology at MD Anderson Cancer Center. I'm a surgeon scientist, so my lab has been focused on the tumor microenvironment, specifically the fibroblasts that are surrounding the cancer cells. And we've shown that the fibroblasts are very important to promote the cancer cell proliferation, migration, resistance to conventional therapy. And so we've identified a target called DKK3 that's being secreted by just the fibroblasts and is responsible for a lot of these actions. And we've developed a novel blocking antibody to this molecule called DKK3 And we've got in vitro and in vivo data, mostly in pancreatic cancer models, which, as you know, is one of the most aggressive cancers around with a very poor prognosis. And we've shown pretty exciting results to not only inhibit tumor growth and metastasis, but also produce some cures in these mice. And we found that the DKK3 also inhibits the tumor immune response, making these tumors resistant to immunotherapy. So treating the mice with the antibody can allow these immunotherapies to work and be very effective in these models. And so I've recently started a small NewCo with a couple of co-founders. We've licensed the technology to the company called Stellanova, and we're moving forward towards commercialization. But you know, I know the science side, and I think the clinical side, but what I'm missing is that gap in between to know how to bring a technology like this to the clinic. My two co-founders are pretty experienced in this area, but I am not. So I'd like to learn from this course to be a better partner in this journey. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Rosa.
Okay, I'm next. I'm Russell Hayward. I'm the CEO of AtiraRx. We're in Dallas, Texas, and we are a startup. In our second year, we have licensed small molecule technology from UT Southwestern, targeting metastatic breast cancer. And we're currently taking that to clinic, which we expect to be in clinic by end of this year. I'm in this program because, I told everybody last week, I've been an entrepreneur in my life, and this is my first chance or my first shot at life sciences. So I'm here to learn as much as I can about this particular business, and certainly learn what I'm walking through this year as we go through all our different studies, et cetera, or our IND enabling studies. And then what the picture is after after phase one. That's really where my interest is. What happens next, and how do we talk to these to big pharma in any particular exit partners? So I'm looking forward to this. So far, it's been great. I'm sorry I had to leave early last week, but as I said, my wife picked up COVID. I want to make sure I didn't get to anybody else.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we all are living with these kinds of disruptions. Thanks, Russell. Who's next?
All right. Okay. My name is Xiaotong Song. I'm a associate professor at Texas A&M. I was training at Baylor College of Medicine, the Center for Cell and Gene Therapy, since 2003 to 2016. And I founded a startup in Houston in 2016 to develop oncolytic virus therapy. The company was funded by CPRIT grant and NIH SBR grant, and the company was acquired in 2020. So now I'm working on a CAR T project for solid tumor. The issue for CAR T for solid tumor is immune suppressive and is not supportive for T cell expansion. And a key issue, but overlooked issue, is the nutrient competition between tumor and T cell. So we develop a platform to enhance CAR T for solid tumor by metabolically reprogramming the human T cell. So
why are you in the class?
Yeah, so I'm here to jumpstart the new company here to engage all the necessary resources.
Great. Okay. Sorry, I had to cut you off because it's going a little long. How do you say your name? Xiaotong? Is that
yes?
right?
Yes, correctly. Yeah.
That's okay. Good. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next.
Yeah, I'm next. So I'm from the same institute as Xiaotong. My name is Robert Tsai. I'm an associate professor, and I have long-term research interest in stem cell and cancer cell mechanism. And through that research, we developed an oral drug delivery device, and we use it to treat oral precancer as a way to prevent oral cancer formation. So the reason I joined the program is that we have preclinical study, and we would like it to validate the device in humans. So we want to get more information about, the necessary step for clinical trial. At the same time, whether the device is suitable for commercialization, I have no idea. So that's the reason I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Is that everyone?
I think I'm on the list. Hi. Yeah, my name is Qin Jian. I'm the professor at the UT Health Science Center at San Antonio. I'm biochemist and cell biology by training. And based on the research in my laboratory, we developed the new small compounds that targeted on the purinergic receptor. And this compound showed good efficacy on triple negative breast cancer, both in vitro and in vivo, especially on the advanced metastatic triple negative cancer. I'm the scientific founder of the Riverwalk Therapeutics, as Johanna said earlier. In partnership with Johanna, we want to further develop this drug and also attract the external fundings to support the further development. We joined this program to learn the business aspect of the biotech, marketing or strategies developed to promote our further development, and also to help attracting the investment and to help moving these therapeutics to the clinic.
Great, thank you. Is it Jean or Jian? What do I?
Jean.
Jean, okay, great. Anyone else that we haven't?
Yeah, hi, my name is Gareth. I'm an immunologist by training. I'm actually, I've recently moved over to working for Welsh Government here in the UK. I'm the program lead for their advanced therapies and precision medicine programs within Wales. I'm part of the team with Bruna Corradetti and Joe Jilka. We're working on exosome-based therapies for ovarian cancer. Here in this program to learn more about the small business side and startups.
Great, okay. So have we got all the team leads identified so far? Yeah, Enrique, you there? Are we good?
Yes, we have.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, thank you everybody for your introductions, and you're all in the right place. You know, you're actually at the right stage for this class because you're going to learn a lot and about whether your idea can be commercialized. And if people get too far along, it's really hard for them to pivot, change directions if what they're learning doesn't support their initial idea. So hopefully none of you are in that situation and can learn. So okay, let me start here because I'm talking to a group of scientists and clinicians, actually physicians. So what's the difference between science and business? The two can't be more different. What the drivers for science are different than the drivers for business. And this is a really interesting article in PLOS that sort of talked about 10 rules for determining whether you can commercialize. But anyway, science, as you know, is based on original contributions to understanding and expanding the body of knowledge that you want to publish your findings so you can spread the word. Business wants to develop useful products and commercialize them. And the best scientific research is in academia, and the best product development is in industry, and the two just don't overlap. So another important thing to think about is to consider whether the need is there and not something that's a nice to have or a want. If people will pay, then no matter what, sorry, if people will not pay, I've got to turn this off, excuse me. If people won't pay, then no matter how good your idea is, it's never going to be successfully commercialized. So it's about finding where the money is and what they think. Products have to address a compelling need. So not this, it would be nice to have this product in addition to whatever we already have. It has to be sort of an, oh my God, if this was available, I would kill to get it. It is exactly what I need to help my patients, help my practice, reduce cost if you're an insurer and so on. And then scientists live for the peer reviews, and I'm going to posit that customers are the ultimate peer review. They're going to vote with their pocketbooks one way or another. So it's all about the customers. And great science, which many of you may have, just does not equal opportunity for commercialization. So investors are driven by profit, not science. And I recall an entrepreneur asking me once, you know, do investors always liquidate their position in a company when there's an exit, when the company is sold or whatever? Because maybe they just really love the science we're working on and they want to stay invested in the company. And my answer is, you know, no, they always liquidate. It's about making money. And this question demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding about investor motivations. So I'm sure as scientists, you're sitting there and saying, well, that's sad. You know, they should care. And, you know, maybe at some level they do. They're invested in healthcare, maybe for personal reasons, maybe just because they see it as a bigger profit opportunity. But the bottom line is an investor wants to make money. So I found that this man, who I don't know, is CEO of a startup, talking about what it's like to be a scientist and trying to approach the commercial world was very illustrative. He said, my passion for science stemmed from curiosity about the world. After all, the role of scientists is to ask questions, lots of them, without necessarily having an answer or a destination in mind. Following a path of inquiry wherever it leads has given us some of the most important discoveries of our time. And in getting my company off the ground, I learned that entrepreneurs have to go about things from the other direction, asking instead, how do we make this happen? Rather than focusing on questions, it's about focusing on answers, assuming solutions are out there and working to find them. The scientist in me could have happily stayed in the lab forever, tweaking chemistries in an effort to gather more information and hit on a more perfect formulation. But as anyone who's ever dabbled in business knows, getting something to market and iterating based on real feedback from customers is essential. And I love this because I know a lot of scientists who are like this, who just don't want to get out of the lab. They just want to try one more thing. And that doesn't always work for business. This is one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Thaddeus Allen, who was in my Startup 101 class in 2016. He was a postdoc, cancer biologist working in the lab of John Bishop, a Nobelist. Some of you probably know his name. And when he presented his data, which was very carefully done, he made, I thought, an excellent case on why this was a promising area. And he received very good feedback from experts I brought him to and investors that we took it to for feedback, not for investment. So he founded Tradewind Bioscience, left UCSF, and set about looking for funding. It didn't go well. Here's what he told me last week. And this is a quote from the email he sent me. Said, the biggest mistake I've made was trying to convince investors the science was compelling instead of the value proposition being compelling. So focus more on how you will make money. They're not here to help you succeed in making a therapeutic or a diagnostic. They are here to invest. Learning how to position your company is actually very, very hard and will take many iterations and evolutions of your company pitch and value proposition. And I shared that with you because he's from your world. He's a cancer biologist and he did a startup, not successfully. And he added in this email, I know you told me all this years ago. And yes, I did. So hopefully can save you some of that pain by teaching you now, although I taught him then and he didn't register. So what are must-haves for a company? The question for all of you is this a research project or the basis for a viable company? And you need to make the business case for why your science can become a product that answers a critical, unsatisfied need, and that the market has validated your hypothesis. This is called product market fit. There must be a path for investors to make money, because the market is sizable. Competition isn't fulfilling the need, and there's a payback on the investment in a reasonable time frame. And timing is critical. Time frames in business are different than in science. Business requires focus on results that reduce the risk for investment. When I ask one of my entrepreneurs, how long will it take you to get to a value inflection point? Meaning the company will be worth more because it has reduced risk. I sometimes hear, we need 5 years to do the right experiments, or 3 years, or some such answer. Wrong answer. I ask, what can you do in 18 to 24 months that will prove your concept? So you have to think shorter term, you have to think results. This is not time for a random walk to explore interesting directions. It's a very different mindset. So this data is quoted quite frequently. It's why do startups fail? We all know there's a very high failure rate in startups. And the main reason for failure, which is cited by 42% of this sample, which is a well-constructed sample of entrepreneurs, was that there was no market need. We're going to teach you how to increase your odds. One of my colleagues who was formerly with Roche Ventures said this many years ago, and I put it on a slide because it's just very succinct. Companies rarely fail because the technology didn't work. They fail for all kinds of other reasons. So it's not just about the science. Okay, I'm just going to pause here. I see, wow, there's a lot in the chat. Let me just see what's there. Oh no, I think it's, okay. Anyone have any questions at this point or comments they'd like to make? Okay, I'll keep going then.
I have one.
Yeah,
Can I comment?
Russell.
Just a couple of slides back, you're talking about how the science is kind of unimportant to the investor. And I honestly cannot underscore that anymore. You know, I do a lot of pitches, and majority of people that I pitch to, like, they just don't understand the science. They'll go, well, okay, how am I going to make money out of this? How long is it going to be before I make some money out of this? And how can you de-risk it? So I'm just supporting everything you just said, because out there in the market raising capital, they're the questions that I get asked, and that's what our decks have to answer before the question gets asked. But the science is unimportant to them. If you can prove that there's a market for it, and that maybe if you're going for 10% of that market, and it's a reasonable return on their capital, obviously depending on the risk, then they're interested. They're not interested really what it does. They're interested in how is it going to work and who's going to buy it. So
and that's perfect. And I didn't set you up to make that comment, right? I mean, you couldn't have reinforced it better. And you've been out there apparently pitching. So thank you for that. Yeah, this is a reality. You know, in my world where the VCs, I don't know what it's like, the people you've been calling on, but the VCs here are often scientists themselves, PhDs, MDs, MD PhDs, et cetera, that join VC firms. So they get the science, but it's still, they've got to figure out how are you going to make money? And so that's the essential question. So thank you for that, Russell. Chun.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. So I guess, can you elaborate a little bit more on the product market fit? This sounds to me is if there is a product of similar type in the market, it would be easier to move, you know, this newer innovation to the market or being accepted. But by the nature of our work, it's sometimes maybe just new, there is lost one. It's out there. That will make it harder to sell, right?
Yeah, great question. We're going to actually talk more about product market fit, and then how you can do some competitive analysis. And so that's all part of what we'll discuss today. So hang on. And if after we cover that, you still have the question, please ask again. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, Win.
Yes, I have a question. Looking at the slide, it says you need to develop, make, and develop and deliver a product at a profit, and versus that you have to make money for your investor. There are a lot of startups that never had a profit but made tons of money for its investors. So how do you strike a balance? Should we, obviously for a product to make a profit, that's a much longer term goal versus saying, an early exit strategy that made tons of money for an investor?
Yeah, great question. So the answer is you don't have to make money in the traditional sense of an income statement with a revenue that is gives you a return on the investment, because it takes so many years for us to get to market. I mean, we're talking 10 years, right? From IND to commercialization. I believe those are the numbers for oncology specifically. So yeah, no investor is going to wait 10 years. There are lots of ways that investors can have exits and make money. And we'll talk about that in a few weeks, but just quickly, one of the ways is to do a transaction with a pharmaceutical company that makes that funds a lot of your company going forward and creates value in the company. Another way is to get acquired. And as you know, pharmas are acquiring biotechs pretty early these days. And once there's an acquisition, the investor gets paid back. So yeah, it's not from the revenue from your product. But yeah, really, really good distinction to make. Thanks. Anyone else? All right, let's keep going then. So, this, I'm going to show you a few slides from this VC. His name is Ross Jaffe, from one of the major Silicon Valley life science venture firms, Versant Ventures. And he taught in my class a few years ago. And I love his slides because, he is a VC. He's a very experienced one. He's been in multiple companies and so on. So he thinks like a VC because he is one. So here's what he says: product opportunity. You can't have a successful medical product unless you can build a sustainable and growing business around it. For an innovation to become a successful medical product, you have to have a patient who wants it. That's pretty easy usually. A provider who wants to prescribe or use it, that's the physician crowd. Someone who will pay, not so easy because we have such a complicated market. The patient doesn't pay, the provider doesn't pay. So let's talk to the people who do pay. Those are the insurers, sometimes commercial, sometimes government. Then you need an organization that can develop, make, and deliver the product at a profit. So, you can maybe do some of the early clinical research, but to do large trials, to manufacture and distribute and sell, that's not going to be you, the little startup, for the most part. I mean, there are always exceptions, but I'll speak generally. So you need to have an organization that's a pharma who can do all those things. And then someone who's willing to invest resources to develop the product and build the business. And again, that can be the pharma. Sometimes it's the investors, but not usually. And then if you want innovation, pay attention to the business. So scientific, technical, clinical innovation is necessary, but not sufficient. And you have to build a successful business around the innovation. So I actually cannot, okay. So areas of opportunity, and some of these will be, you've probably thought a lot about unmet clinical needs for either a diagnostic or a therapeutic. New insights into physiology or an approach. But you may not have thought of the next two bullets, which are innovation that improves an existing diagnostic or therapeutic approach or improves healthcare delivery. So we've heard a lot about healthcare delivery during the pandemic. That's a place where you can actually make money. And changes in the healthcare delivery system that alter the approaches. And we've certainly seen that with telemedicine. I don't know how it impacts cancer therapy. You guys could probably educate me on that, but it may. And then you can have some combination, something that has new insights and is better, has easier delivery or less expensive delivery. Why am I, from time to time, okay, sorry. Okay, so criteria for successful products. This is another VC slide. So this is what VCs look for. It has to have an important clinical need with a large market, and dynamics are sort of how the market works. So it could be a large market but shrinking, that wouldn't be good. A large market that's growing and there are reasons for it to grow, that is good. Clinical and regulatory pathway, maybe something you haven't really thought much about, but it's really something that you need to think about and try to understand now, long before you're ready to get into the clinic. A reasonable path to reimbursement. So reimbursement, who's going to pay for this? And payers are absolutely critical. They don't want to pay for things that are necessarily just better or better science. They want to pay for things that are going to reduce their costs. So you always have to have that lens as you think about what you do. It used to be in medical devices that payers would pay for anything that improved quality of care, but that went away. And then it was anything that reduced costs. And yeah, nice if it improved quality of care at the same time. So you sort of had to have both of them, but it was all about cost. So anyway, reimbursement is a key topic, which you're not going to be taking up in this brief class that we're doing together, but which I'm making you aware of. And then look where proprietary technology fits. This is sort of down to Russell's experience. It wasn't the first thing he said. It's on the list, but it's not at the very top. And then management, and that's really key. Do you have, is it a couple of PhDs or a couple of MDs, or is it people who know what they're doing and have grown companies before? And you will see that there are many companies that may start out with 3 scientists, but when investors start putting in serious money, they bring in their own people to manage it, or people that they find. And then reasonable capital requirements to achieve positive cash flow. So there are some areas that people, that investors really don't like going into, such as cardiovascular, because you have to do these huge trials over years. And that just costs a lot of money before you ever get an approved product. So they tend to shy away from those kinds of things. So again, think money. It's about how much money do you have to put in to get cash flow, and if not cash flow, because you're not waiting for the drug to be developed, but let's say you have a device that could be developed faster. If not cash flow, then a reasonable investment return from acquisition, for example, or going public. Okay, everyone got that? All right, this is the last of these kind of sequence of what you need to have when investors are looking for. You have to have a large and growth market. And they used to define this as $500 million. That number has changed. It has to be $1 billion plus market that you're operating in. So they want to know, are you going to play in a market that can absorb new competition and you would have an opportunity to grow? You need to have a novel idea, and I'll use this word differentiated repeatedly. So something very different. Incremental ideas tend not to get investment. Something that's truly different than what exists, it has a shot at it. You have to solve an important problem or need. We talked about that before. The problem has to be major, and the need has to be a major unsatisfied need. So many presentations start with, we are satisfying a major unsatisfied need. And that's great. That's too non-specific, but just keep that in mind. It has to be something where there's not a really satisfactory solution currently. So it has to remove a serious pain point. Pain point meaning something that's really bothersome that is needing a solution. And then this term product market fit, which Chen brought up, customer demand, and that's, you can figure that out from product market fit, which we'll talk about in a little bit. You have to have willing buyers and payers. So a willing buyer is not a patient, unless maybe it's cosmetic surgery. A willing buyer is not a doctor because they're not going to pay. So you have to go to the payers. And then what sort of competitive advantage do you have? So, there's there are literally hundreds of competitors in various segments of the oncology market and thousands in the overall market. So what's your advantage? Are you doing something that's truly differentiated? And it's best if you have fragmented competition or it's a new industry. There is fragmented competition in oncology, depending where you look at it. And there are certainly some areas that we'll call emerging. And then a technology platform. So you want to have more than a single asset. So I see a lot of companies that are like, oh, we have this amazing molecule and it can really it's been shown in mice to have great efficacy against, fill in the name of the indication. But one molecule doesn't make a company. So investors are looking for a platform, so an underlying scientific basis that can be transferred to other applications. So you want to be able to say, we've got a lead molecule for melanoma based on our platform technology. And that's going to be the first one we develop, but after melanoma, we have a list of 3 other indications to pursue that can utilize the platform. That's what investors are looking for. Joanna, I can't tell if your hand is up from before or from now, or do you have a question?
Oh, no, it's a new hand.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, and I know what you're presenting, is generalizations that the most things fall into. But I wondered if you could comment a little bit on investors and niche opportunities, orphan diseases, rare pediatric diseases, those kind of things that it's not a large market, but it's an underserved one, as well as on the flip side of that, you potentially have an easier path as far as regulatory to get there and a shorter path.
Yeah, good observation. And yes, I will talk a bit about orphan, but for everyone's, I don't know if you know the definition of orphan, you have to have 200,000 patients in the US or less. And if you have a drug that satisfies orphan status, you really have an advantage because you get market exclusivity for 7 years. And that's incredibly valuable. So for a while, it seemed like the VCs were only investing in orphan indications. And there's also a higher success rate in orphan indications, so in clinical trials. So there's some reasons why you might want to pursue it. And often you can charge a lot of money. So that's very attractive, again, for the investors. And probably know that some of these drugs, they charge a couple $100,000 for them. So orphan is a great strategy if if what you're doing lends itself to an orphan indication. You mentioned pediatric. Pediatric's always a little harder. It could be orphan, but it's harder to do trials. It's people are even more cognizant of the safety risks, and the markets can be really small. So if your market is too small, it's orphan, but it's tiny. And we have a lot of physicians, scientists who are working on peds. There often just isn't an argument for why this could become a company.
Stephanie,
Cara. Oh, go ahead. Let me take Cara first. She had her hand up, and then Rosa after her.
Okay.
Cara.
Hi, I have a really basic question. So you were saying like a single drug does not make a company, you need a platform. But then your example said like, this can be used to treat melanoma, but then it might also be useful for X, Y, and Z. So if you have a single drug that could treat more than one cancer type, is that a platform?
No, I'm going to say no. It does give you more options, but a platform is really the underlying technology that will let you develop new compounds as well.
Okay, that's
so. Because think about it, if your compound fails in melanoma and that's all you've got, then are you going to get funded to try it out in cardio? You know, there's an interesting example from today's news, which is kind of sad for me because I was involved in advising this company called Cortexine, which had a novel approach to Alzheimer's. And the UCSF scientist came to me in 2013 and he said, you know, mainstream science just won't pay any attention to me. I'm shunned by all my colleagues, but I really think that Alzheimer's is caused by bacteria that gets into the brain. And so fast forward a few years, and he brought in a experienced entrepreneur from the neuroscience world, from industry, and they raised money. And they ended up raising a couple $100 million and entered into trials. And today the news came out, maybe I missed the initial news, was the trial failed. It was a phase 2. It failed, and the founder, my scientist, and the CEO are leaving or have left the company. So, you know, and they're taking this drug or this molecule, I'm not sure what form it takes, and trying a completely different indication on it. So we'll see if anybody's going to, the stock has dropped from 38 to 6. They went public, obviously. We'll see if anyone wants to invest in this, but it's the same molecule and they don't have a backup. So anyway, that's sort of a long answer to your question. Is one molecule, even with different indications, is not as desirable as multiple, what they call multiple shots on goal, multiple molecules.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good question. Rosa.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Just a quick question. So you said that orphan, if you can meet that orphan disease definition, that could be helpful, but then your market that you would expect is not going to be maybe $1 billion, right? If it's an orphan disease.
Which is okay.
Okay. So it's a lower bar.
Well, it's high to get that orphan designation, but the economics are so different. If you think about it, you know, for a drug addressing $1 billion market, what can you charge for it? Probably not $100,000, but for a drug for an orphan market, so you just have to do the math, right? A small market times a much more significant price is going to be as attractive as a big market. And remember, the market exclusivity is really key. I mean, you own that market for 7 years. So it can be very attractive.
Great, thank you.
Sure. I don't know who is first, but I'll take Jean first.
Oh, hi. I have a question in terms of the innovation. And so I know the company like to have the ones first in class and something new. But then on the other hand, I know if we put a new target and then the VC will say, yeah, it's too risky. How do you balance? But then if you work on the mature pathways, then there are many competitors. And how do you balance risk with the interest?
Yeah, a great philosophical question, right? It's like, well, there are VCs who will take big risks. Not all of them, but some of them, that's sort of how they're wired. So if they see that you have done a decent proof of concept so that the risk isn't complete, but you know, like, wow, this thing looks like it might work and it really could disrupt the market, they may be willing to invest. And I have an example from one of my, well, I guess she's an alum now. She's a PhD student, 5th year. She's doing something really innovative for IVF, in vitro fertilization. She's working with stem cells, and I just brought her to a top IP attorney yesterday, and he gave us some advice, and I said, well, you know what, from your broad background, what do you think? Is this something, you know, it's pretty risky? And he said, you know, that's not going to bother people because this could be such a big idea that, you know, there's a set of VCs who like to invest in those kinds of things. So not every VC. But it really comes down to any VC's equation about, you know, what's the chance you could make money out of something that's sort of incremental? So may have a real difficult time getting market traction, may have trouble getting investment from pharmaceutical and so on. What's that risk versus knowing that the science is less risky? And there's no perfect answer to that. Wei.
Oh, hi, thank you. So our team is working on a cancer diagnostic screening assay kind of project. So back to the platform question, can you use an example to explain for a diagnostic product, what would be considered as a platform or not a platform? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. It doesn't really apply to a diagnostic. So I'm glad you asked that. This is for therapeutics, and I always forget we've got diagnostics people in the class. For you, it would be important to show that your diagnostic works for multiple diseases or multiple conditions. So here, to have one that's useful not just for pick a cancer, but maybe for a broad range of cancers, or cancer plus something else. So it's the idea that you're not stuck doing just one thing, and if it turns out that it's not proven, that you have no place to go, and you always want to have a backup strategy. That's what this is about.
Okay, thanks.
Make sense? Yeah, sure. Okay, onward. And just to flag you, we have about 15 minutes left. I love your questions. Keep them coming. I'd rather do questions than slides any day. We're not going to cover everything today, but I sort of planned that we wouldn't. So some of these, we'll cover a number of these topics next week when we do customer discovery as well, because they fit nicely into that. So, oh gosh, I forgot this. Sorry, this other question, the other criteria. I'll just quickly cover it. So they want to know that the clinical problem is growing, that whatever you're doing supports better quality, more cost-effective care. So it's, again, not just quality, it's cost-effectiveness, must-have versus nice-to-have. We've talked about that. Referral patterns, you know, how would this be used? Is this something that a primary care physician would refer to an oncologist who refers to a radiologist or whatever? How does that all work? That's something you need to understand. And then how do you find the decision maker? So again, the decision maker is not the patient, who of course would want anything that would make them better. And it's not the doctor. He may be an influencer, but he's not paying. So how do you find the actual decision maker for your new therapeutic? And then it's all about economics. So how is this going to work? What economics meaning the money? How will it work for the providers, for the patients? Are there going to be some self-pay component to this or not? But most important, the payers, the insurers. And then payment codes and reimbursement may be topics you don't know about. A payment code is something that identifies the condition or the therapy, and it's how insurers decide whether to pay. So if you don't have a payment code, like, oh yes, this fits exactly into this pre-established code that insurers will pay on, then you have to get one, and that's really difficult and takes a lot of time. So, and the payers, could be an insurance company or it could be the government through Medicare and Medicaid. And you can imagine how long it takes to get approval there. So you have to get a medical diagnosis and a procedure code. And takes a lot of time. So it's great if you can say, and there's already a code for this. And we know it can be reimbursed. So just more things to think about. Okay, onward. So the oncology market. The good picture is you're in a big market, okay? There are basically every pharma is playing there. Wade, did you have a question? No question? Okay, your hand's up maybe from before. So I'm gonna keep going. So that's the good news. The bad news is it's highly competitive. So there are hundreds of competitors in any one indication, and there are 1,700 compounds in development right now. 1,700, think about it. We talked about success rates being higher for orphan drugs than drugs addressing broader market. The average is a 13% success rate going from phase 1 trials to launch, which actually sounds not that bad to me. Average development time's 9.5 years, but as we talked about, investors are looking for an earlier exit. Now, there's a huge amount of information available through what's called secondary market research. That's not talking directly to people, but just reviewing what's out there. And I'm just going to share with you a few things that I'm fortunate to have access to. One of those very expensive market research services that my department buys, and they have just everything you could possibly want to know. So this is the R&D pipeline, meaning the drugs coming along by the mechanism of action. So you can actually see that if you are, let's see, immuno-oncology, which is the green line, it's actually in early stage, which is what we might want to look at. There are fewer entries in that, which sort of was a surprise to me. I thought everything is IO from what I hear. These are some unmet needs in oncology. So you could use information like that. If you do have a platform technology that can be applied to a number of different indications, you could use data like that to figure out what indication would make the most, I mean, it's just a starting point, but it might make the most sense. So for instance, number 13, which is that all these are black bubbles for major opportunities. Number 13 is melanoma. So I don't think they define what the size of the bubbles means, but at the bottom axis, which you can't see, is the size of the opportunity. So to the further right, the bigger the opportunities. So, some of these opportunities with unmet needs are not huge, but they may not have much competition. This is a slide that shows you that you can learn about what's called gap analysis, where there's a need and the importance of the need and what is currently exists. So this is great information if you're trying to figure out what to do. So the first on the left is reducing the cost of therapy so that there's better access. And then it looks like it's very important by the size of that bubble, and it's not being currently attained. So they tell you a bit about, what the story is here. And then this slide shows you the unmet need by geography, and then the cost of therapy, reducing toxicity, better predictive biomarkers are the most important needs. And these are physicians who gave this information. So this is an analysis for checkpoint modulators. I think somebody's working on CAR T. Here are the challenges. So this is market research, can tell you, where the opportunities could be. Some tumor types are refractory, so that could be an opportunity for you. And here's just more directly some of the opportunities. Combination therapies with other modalities, restoring functions in patients who are refractory, and so on. So you can find out this kind of stuff do it by doing, first of all, really good business literature searches, and maybe some science searches, but don't get stuck down in the weeds of the science. Just look for the needs and what the market is telling you. Okay, so there's stuff out there, and you should always start with secondary research. I heard a pitch the other day. Pitch is a presentation of why someone should be interested in something from a team in New York, and they said their idea was Lyme disease, that they could do a Lyme disease vaccine. And I thought to myself, gee, hasn't this been done? And so while I was listening to it, I did a 30-second search on the internet, and sure enough, there were 2 vaccines, and they'd both failed, and nobody was doing vaccines anymore. And if this scientist had just done a 30-second search, she would have seen that this was not going to be a promising area and could have pivoted to something else. So, this stuff's I won't say it's easy to do because you're not accustomed to doing it, but it's certainly something you should be doing at the beginning of assessing what the market is. Okay, target market. What is a target market? Okay, so we talked about the big market. Let's say the big market is oncology. It's too big to be useful. So you're going to be focused on some piece of oncology, some indication. I'm just going to pick lung cancer or breast cancer, the examples. So even those are too big to be your target market. Who in lung cancer, or what in triple negative breast, or even triple negative breast cancer. So the idea is you need to segment down the total market to a subset that really needs your product. And a couple of examples here are radiation oncologists treating lung patient cancer with non-small cell, did I say that right? Lung cancer, yeah. Or triple negative breast cancer patients. We know they have terrible survival rates. So you can look for a subset of your market that really needs your product, such as poor survival rates, or that failed other therapies or whatever. So think about what you're doing in that way and identify this segment of customers who are most likely to need your product. This is another example of patients with advanced lung cancer, and it's by classification of their cancer and what kind of treatment they've had. So you could decide to target the market segment that has non-squamous NSCLC that are treatment naive, who are 43% of the market. That's a very specific segment and will enable you to figure out how big the market is, or one of the pieces of data. So I'm going to just finish this little segment on segmentation and then ask for questions. So this is another market segment, and you can see this is GI, and it's been divided by what the unmet need is and the market potential. I guess they've looked at the size of the market. So you can think about things that way as a target market. And this is melanoma segmentation. This is different types of segmentation you could do to identify your target, by type of melanoma, by therapy, or by geography. And of course, we want to focus on the US first, so sort of leave out the geography, but the other two could be good ways to segment. All right, I'm going to pause here with a question for you to think about and come back with next time, which is, what is your target market? Okay, what is your target? And it's George, is that your first name? It's not on your slide.
Yeah, so this is George. Sorry, I want only to say 1 minute. So thank you, it's everything very interesting. and very helpful for us. And I want to say that in the balance between scientists and venture capital, I would say the scientists will have the primate. And look why. I was very fortunate to know the guys from BioNTech, the Turkish guy founders of BioNTech. In 2014, I was in a grant with them in European Union where they were involved exactly because they were considered a small company, 8 people working in a little room in Germany, and they were named the Turks because they were Turkish people in Germany. Now, today they are billionaires, and their technology was saving lives. In 2014, quite nobody was believing messenger RNA will have an effect in no type of disease. Of course, they were doing work in cancer. The man, Ugur, was leaving his position as physician scientist in a university in Germany. In that situation, it's absolutely unseen in Europe. Europeans don't make so much money as clinician scientists. So the guy was, and also his wife, they were so convinced that what they are doing is important. During the discussion with us in the grant, I was completely shocked that these people were absolute believers. Doesn't matter the guys behind, were smiling, okay, these guys are saying the thing. So I want to say, the science is what will be on the first step. If we believe that our approaches, our small molecules, our diagnostic will work, I would say still the scientists, clinician scientists are in the driving seat. Doesn't matter what the venture capitals is saying. For these people, they were saying we don't put too much money.
So who put
last year BioNTech was more valuable as Lufthansa.
Yeah, it's a great example, but who put the money in that allowed them to develop it to the point where?
Of course, it was at a point, as you said, till a point. And then the point reached, they were left to run themselves. They were believing, and in fact, as you said very nicely, one of the scientific founder became a CEO, something that is rarely seen. So he, Ugur, is a CEO of the company, and he was from that moment, exactly because he considers that he has to promote his company. He knows the best how to promote his company. Not any CEO that they will found. The wife is a chief medical officer because she's a wonderful clinician. So both of them took in their hands completely control of the company.
Well, it's, I'm so pleased that there are people who believe in their vision and can literally change the world. Moderna, as the Boston-based company, was actually funded by a VC very early, named Flagship Ventures at the time. And, what did they have? Well, they had some good science, and he had a vision. But that's not always the case. And so, while I agree with, yes, you have to have passion, you have to pursue it, and sometimes it's enough. They were one of the I won't say lucky, one of the companies that was able to succeed following the science, but not every company, in fact, 95% of them aren't going to make it. So we could have this debate another time, but thank you for that point of view. And I'd love to know a different time more about how you know them and so on.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. All right, everyone. I hope you all signed up for office hours, and not all of you, because I think I created 10 time slots. If there's still slots available, would love to see you on Friday. Otherwise, I'll see you a different week. And do some reading, think about your target market, and I'll see you next Wednesday.
Stephanie, thank you. This was a great opportunity to learn more about the business side and how to see it intersect with the business and the science. So thank you. Have a good day.
Great. I'll stick around for a few minutes if anyone wants to chat, and otherwise, see you next week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. No chatters in the group. Okay.
So I have a question, Stephanie.
Sure.
So the orphan drug status that you indicated, that there should be the numbers you mentioned less than 200,000. right?
Patients in the US.
Less than 200,000 patients in the US. So I believe that most of the drugs or drug candidates coming out from St. Jude Children's Hospital, for example. So the competition in that is rigorous. That's what you mentioned, right? That's once you get, then you have a selective advantage.
Absolutely, it's very valuable.
Okay, so for that competition, what are the parameters that they, to get the status they have? I mean, I'm sure they have rigorous safety data that they need, or what are the?
I don't know, you can look it up. It's FDA. Just look at their definition and what they would want to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will have regulatory experts that we can hook you up with so we can learn more.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Let's start by reading what FDA says, and that may answer some of your questions.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hello?
Manuel, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So when you talk about investors, so what is the imaging or the things that I have to imagine as you say investors? Because sounds like you say like a very general. So it's like a committee, a group of people. So the other thing is that if the science is not so important, so how gullible, how the believers that they could be. So how I have to afford an investor? I don't know what is an investor, but what I have to wait for.
Well, so there are different types of investors, and we'll talk about that in the fourth lecture. Some are VCs. That's what I spoke about today. They're the ones who can invest the most money. Some are angels who are individuals who invest less money, their own personal money. There are grants, there are foundations, there are family offices, there are all kinds of different investors. They're not always committees. VCs, yes, they invest as a firm. Angels can invest by themselves, family offices, who knows how they work, and so on. But yeah, the science is important. I mean, no one's going to, it's assumed that you have good science. And the way that they figure that out is they can hire the best experts in the world in your area and get a read on your science. So if, presuming they're not cancer biologists, although some of them may be, they can go find a top cancer set, as many as they need, because they can pay to have the science reviewed.
So that means that the person that we have to convince or have to show our science are not really the investors, are really the committee that are behind investors.
They're not a committee. They're let's just call them consultants.
Yeah, the counselors
or advisors. And
advisors, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you have to convince the investors that there's a company here.
Right. Yeah, that one I can understand that.
And then when they're doing diligence on you, they're going to want to really review everything you've done. And for that, they'll probably, unless there's somebody in the partnership already who is an expert in whatever area you're working in, they will go out and pay somebody for consulting time to go review all your experiments and, et cetera, your papers and on. Yeah. So it will be looked at. There's no chance to get an investment. Well, I shouldn't say that. In my world, for the most part, Elizabeth Holmes accepted with Theranos.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but you have to look at who she had as her investors. They're people who knew nothing about biotech, nothing. I mean, they're, the Secretary of State, right? I mean, what did he know about it? So that's their fault for putting money into something they knew nothing about. Right. But in the knowledgeable world, people here do a great deal of diligence, as I'm sure they do in your Texas network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You got to do good science.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the question. All right. Anyone else? Stephen? You're a black box. Maybe you just went away. Did you have a question or? All right.
Sorry? All right.
Okay, all right, Enrique.
Right.
And
Stephanie, I'm gonna stay a minute here.
Okay, great. I will as well. And Manuel, I think we're going to have a private talk here. So need you to leave. And Stephen, who isn't there,